In the small pet supply shop called Pet Paradise, nestled in a quiet residential neighborhood of Portland, Melissa Cooper was carefully arranging newly arrived collars as soft spring sunlight filtered through the windows. The store had become a cherished gathering place for local residents. "Hey Bailey, what do you think of this one?" Melissa showed a collar to the large golden retriever who helped mind the store. Bailey responded with a wagging tail. Nearby, Luna, another golden retriever, was contentedly dozing off. At 3 p.m., the store was filled with its usual warm atmosphere. Colorful pet supplies lined the shelves, and seasonal flowers adorned the windowsill. For Melissa, this store was more than just a workplace. It was a space filled with dreams and precious memories. On the second-floor living space, a small altar had been set up in the living room. There, a photograph showed a smiling little girl with big blue eyes. Emma, age 6. The photo was of her beloved daughter, lost in an accident 3 years ago. Every morning, Melissa placed fresh flowers before the photograph. Saying, "Good morning, Emma," had become part of her daily routine. In the photo, the little girl's smile seemed as if she might spring to life at any moment. She had loved animals and made it her daily joy to play with the dogs and cats that came to the store. Everyone used to say that her smile was the spitting image of her mother Melissa's. It had been raining that spring day. While driving Emma to ballet class, there was an accident on the bridge over the Columbia River. In the thick fog that enveloped the bridge, the car lost control and plunged into the cold water. Melissa desperately tried to save her daughter, but the strong current tore Emma from her grasp. Despite a week-long search operation, Emma's body was never found. The day the police told her further search efforts would be difficult, something inside Melissa froze forever. 3 years had passed. Melissa had been living each day with all her might. Her divorced husband had ceased contact, and she lived a quiet life with only occasional visits from her mother Sarah. However, the store, her dream, and her 2 dogs had continued to support her. Every evening, Melissa would take Bailey and Luna for a walk to the nearby park. The casual conversations with regular customers she met there and the sight of her dogs' happy faces helped heal her heart. Sometimes, she would see Emma's face and the children playing in the park. Melissa, closing early today. Her mother Sarah had stopped by the store. Now 65, her mother would check in on her daughter 2 or 3 times a week out of concern. "Yes, I need to organize some new merchandise," Melissa answered with a smile. Though her expression was peaceful, an undying sadness lurked in the depths of her eyes. Everyone praised her strength. But Melissa knew she wasn't strong. She was just desperate to keep living. In a world without Emma, she was simply trying to keep moving forward. That evening at dusk, Melissa's cell phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number. "Is this Mrs. Cooper?" "This is Officer Johnson from the Portland Police Department." A composed male voice echoed from the other end of the line. "Yes, speaking." Melissa responded while perched on the counter, checking inventory. "This is difficult to say, but your daughter has been in an accident." At that moment, the blood drained from Melissa's face. She unconsciously gripped the edge of the counter tightly. "I'm sorry, but my daughter passed away 3 years ago." Her voice trembled. Bailey anxiously drew closer to her feet. A moment of silence on the other end of the line. "But this is definitely your daughter. It's been confirmed by preliminary DNA testing. She's currently been transported to St. Joseph Hospital. Could you come as soon as possible?" Even after hanging up, Melissa couldn't move for a while. She called her mother Sarah, asking her to come right away. Then, with trembling hands, she turned the store sign to "closed." St. Joseph Hospital was one of Portland's premier private hospitals. Its new building stood imposingly against the twilight sky. "Mrs. Cooper. Thank you for coming." A male police officer in his 40s approached Melissa in the lobby. Next to him stood a middle-aged female doctor in a white coat. "I'm Dr. Williams. I'll be the attending physician." The doctor smiled kindly, but there was something grave lurking in her expression. "Your daughter's condition is stable, but she hasn't regained consciousness yet." Regarding the details of the accident. According to Dr. Williams, the accident had occurred in an upscale residential area in the western part of the city. A girl was struck by a car while crossing the road on her way home from school. Fortunately, she was immediately transported to the hospital and her life wasn't in danger. "Actually," Detective Johnson lowered his voice, "there's a complicated situation regarding the victim's identity." When Melissa was led to the hospital room, she was struck speechless by what she saw. On the bed lay a girl of about 9 years old. Big blue eyes. The gentle curve of her eyebrows. A small nose. Cheeks with faint freckles. There was no mistaking it. It was Emma. However, another couple was already in the hospital room. A middle-aged man with a stern expression and a refined-looking woman. They both clearly exuded an air of upper class. "We are her parents." The man stepped forward. "I'm Robert Harrison. This is my wife, Patricia." "What are you saying?" Melissa's voice trembled. "This child is my daughter, Emma." "No," Patricia Harrison said quietly but firmly. "She is our daughter, Sophie." The air in the room froze. Outside the window, the twilight sky was gradually growing darker. Only the steady beeping of the monitor broke the heavy silence. "Let me explain the DNA test results in detail." Dr. Williams pulled out documents with data. The emergency protocol rapid test shows a 99.9% probability of blood relation with Mrs. Cooper. However, at that moment, there was a small sound from the bed. The girl was moving her eyes, trying slowly to open her eyelids. Everyone's attention instantly focused on the bed. Patricia Harrison quickly rushed to the girl's side. "Sophie. It's me, Mama." The girl looked around in confusion. Then, in a faint voice, she said, "Mama." At that one word, Melissa's heart clenched painfully. The girl's gaze was clearly directed at Patricia Harrison. "Mrs. Cooper," Robert Harrison began speaking in a calm voice. "I understand how you feel. However, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Sophie is our daughter. She has received the finest education and been raised in the best environment." His words carried the distinct arrogance of the upper class. "Please wait," Melissa struggled to maintain her composure. "The DNA test confirmed it, didn't it? This child is without doubt my daughter Emma." "Yes," Detective Johnson intervened. "This matter will require more detailed investigation." And his words were interrupted by the sound of footsteps from the hallway. "Melissa!" Sarah burst into the hospital room. And the moment she saw the girl in the bed, she stood frozen. "Emma!" Sarah's voice trembled slightly. Night had fully fallen over Portland. From the hospital room window, street lights were beginning to twinkle like stars. What was happening in this room was a reality no one could have predicted. And this was only the beginning of a long battle. The next morning at the Portland courthouse, Melissa's footsteps echoed in the marble hallway. Beside her walked her mother Sarah and Janet Morgan, an attorney dressed in a navy suit. In the initial hearing, maintaining composure is crucial, Attorney Morgan explained while carrying a stack of documents. The Harrisons have already retained one of Portland's top law firms. A few days ago, the Harrisons had filed for emergency temporary custody. They claimed that separating the child without legal grounds would be detrimental to the child's welfare. In the car heading to the courthouse, Melissa reflected on yesterday's events. "Sophie, my treasure," Patricia Harrison gently stroked the girl's hair. The girl, having regained consciousness, was completely attached to the Harrisons. "Hey, don't you remember me?" When Melissa nervously spoke up, the girl showed a confused expression. "I'm sorry. I don't." Those words tore Melissa's heart to pieces. According to Dr. Williams, the girl's memories were entirely of just the 3 years with the Harrison family. Instead of ballet, she took piano lessons. Instead of visiting the pet store, she went to riding club on weekends. Instead of small birthday parties, she celebrated at luxury hotels in Manhattan. It was like a completely different life from Emma's. This could be temporary memory loss, Dr. Williams continued with her professional explanation. It's a condition called trauma-induced amnesia. The girl's way of speaking and gestures were clearly different from the Emma of before. Refined and sophisticated mannerisms. Rich vocabulary. She behaved almost like a miniature adult. "You know, Grandma," when Sarah visited the hospital room, the girl tilted her head curiously. "I don't have a grandmother. That's what Papa and Mama told me." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. But what was even more heartbreaking was the genuine confusion in the girl's eyes. She truly believed she was Sophie. The situation rapidly grew more complex. Local media caught wind of the case, and headlines blazed: "Wealthy couple and birth mother in shocking custody battle." Various speculations flew around on social media. The Harrisons' legal team launched an aggressive information campaign. Mrs. Cooper doesn't have stable income, the Harrisons' lawyer pointed out at a press conference. Her small retail operation was effectively operating at a loss according to last year's tax returns. Melissa's supporters countered, "Can you put a price on love? Does being rich give you the right to steal someone's child?" But the Harrisons' arguments continued. "We have provided her with the finest education and environment," Robert Harrison declared proudly before the media, dressed in his expensive suit. "Sophie excels at her prestigious private school. Horseback riding, piano, French. Our home has the optimal environment to nurture her talents." Behind those words lay a clear implication. A middle-class shopkeeper couldn't provide such educational opportunities. More people began peering curiously into Melissa's store. Even some regular customers started keeping their distance. "Don't mind them," Sarah encouraged her. "The truth will surely come to light." But the most painful times were during hospital visits. The girl gradually recovered and even began practicing piano in her hospital room. Of course, it was the Harrisons who had brought in the expensive electronic piano. "It's Chopin's Nocturne," the girl proudly demonstrated. Patricia Harrison smiled contentedly beside her. Melissa remembered Emma from when she used to take ballet lessons. Her daughter dancing in her leotard. The person before her now seemed like a completely different person. "Mom." When she called out to Emma like that, the girl showed a confused expression and looked toward Patricia. That gesture squeezed Melissa's heart. At night, Melissa would gaze at Emma's photo on the second floor of her store. In that smile, she could feel their undeniable blood connection. DNA doesn't lie. However, the current Sophie seemed to possess an entirely different soul. And now, facing the first hearing at the courthouse, Melissa had steeled her resolve. "Even if you don't remember me," Melissa said quietly but firmly to Attorney Morgan, "I will never give up." As autumn began making its presence felt in Portland, with maple leaves starting to turn red and downtown streets bustling with tourists, there was a melancholic air about the place. The court battle had entered its third month. "We've found new evidence," Detective Johnson spread out thick files in Attorney Morgan's office. Through the window, the historic courthouse spire was visible. On the day of the accident 3 years ago, another car was captured on the bridge's surveillance camera. A foggy image. On the bridge over the Columbia River, a black SUV was driving behind Melissa's car. And just before the accident, there were traces of intentional contact. Though the footage from the old surveillance camera was unclear, the truth was emerging clearly. "It's the same model as the car Mrs. Harrison owned at the time," Detective Johnson's voice echoed heavily. "We found the vehicle inspection records and repair shop records from that time." Evidence continued to surface. On the day of the accident, Patricia Harrison had been making rounds in the area as a medical volunteer. Witnesses reported that she, who usually had a chauffeur, had unusually been driving herself. She discovered Emma, who had been thrown from the car. But instead of calling for help, she put the unconscious girl in her own car and left. Why would she do such a thing? Melissa's voice trembled as she sank deep into the leather chair in the reception room. The truth harbored an even darker depth. The Harrisons had struggled with infertility for years. Dozens of treatments at prestigious hospitals. Consideration of surrogacy. All ended in failure, driving Patricia to give up her career as a doctor. Even adoption wasn't acceptable to the rigid Robert. Obsessed with a perfect lineage, he couldn't accept a child without blood ties. Then came the fateful accident. On the foggy bridge, when Patricia's car tried to pass Melissa's, there was slight contact. Perhaps it wasn't intentional. But as a result, Melissa's car lost control and plunged into the river. Patricia immediately rushed to the scene. There she saw a girl thrown into the river. Big blue eyes, lovely features. In that moment, an insane thought crossed her mind. The mental exhaustion from years of fertility treatments. Her husband's expectations. And the perfect girl before her. This child could be the perfect daughter. In her testimony at the courthouse, Patricia Harrison began telling the truth in a trembling voice in the historic courtroom's solemn atmosphere. Before taking her seat, she briefly looked at Melissa. Her eyes showed deep regret. The moment I saw that child, I was captivated. Silence fell over the courtroom. The people filling the gallery watched with bated breath. I thought it would be a waste for such a beautiful child to be raised in such an environment. With my medical experience and my husband's wealth. Robert had never known about the accident. Patricia told him they were taking in a distant relative's child. She convinced him that, with their wealthy environment, she would surely become a wonderful young lady. We have the power to give her the finest education. Patricia's voice broke. But that couldn't replace love. Every day, tormented by guilt. On the witness stand, Patricia collapsed in tears. Sophie, no, Emma would have dreams every night. Even while saying she didn't remember. The girl's memories were gradually returning. The ballet tune she hummed while playing piano in the hospital room. The gentle way she spoke to toy animals. And most of all, the somehow nostalgic look in her eyes when she saw Melissa. Mom. One day, the girl called to Melissa in a small voice. I had a strange dream. About you and a store full of animals. It was returning as dreams rather than memories. But the blood connection could never be erased. The Harrisons were arrested, but complex emotions swirled in Melissa's heart. I can't hate them, Melissa told her mother Sarah. They did raise Emma with love. That much is certain. As cold rain heralding winter's arrival fell, Melissa and the girl were beginning their new life in pet paradise. Mom, isn't this puppy cute? The girl cradled a small puppy. Her gesture was exactly like Emma's from before. Her memories were returning slowly but surely. Sometimes she would remember her days as Sophie and become confused. But Melissa continued to stay by her daughter's side. There's no need to rush. Melissa gently stroked her daughter's hair. You can remember at your own pace. Bailey and Luna wagged their tails happily around the girl. Perhaps they had known from the start that this child was their precious family member who had been lost that day. "Welcome home, Emma." Warm tears fell from Melissa's eyes. It was the beginning of a new life. Regular customers visiting the store began noticing changes in the girl too. "She's just like Emma used to be," an elderly couple who visited every weekend whispered to Melissa. "She talks to the animals just like she did back then." Indeed, something was changing within the girl. Though she continued her piano practice, her former perfectionist strictness had faded. Instead, she could be seen playing with pure joy. "Mom, tell me about the old days," one night before bedtime, the girl asked Melissa. "About my real memories, from when I was little." Melissa sat next to her daughter and began weaving each precious memory, one by one. Her first ballet recital. The day she helped care for puppies born in the store. Events from their holiday picnics in the park. It was less about recovering memories and more about building new bonds. The 3 years spent with the Harrison family could never be erased. But it was something that should be gently accepted as part of the girl's life. "You know, Mom," the girl suddenly said the day before Christmas, "I remember both lives." "Is that strange?" Melissa held her daughter tightly. "Not at all, sweetheart. You can just be yourself." Outside the window, the year's first snow had begun to fall. Christmas lights on the street trees reflected off the snowflakes, creating a magical glow. A warm atmosphere filled pet paradise. Bailey and Luna played around the girl as always, joined by the new puppies, filling the store with cheerful laughter. A new family photo hung on the wall. It showed a mother and daughter who had overcome past sorrows to find new joy. Next to the photo lay the girl's diary. On its cover, in careful handwriting, were the words, "My two lives." It was the story of a new beginning, where past and present merged together. The sunset light filtering through the store's sign shone a gentle gold, as if anticipating a hopeful tomorrow.